Again, just a reminder, when Jesus, first of all, the Son of Man title is the one title that Jesus wraps his arms around. It's the title he refers himself as the most. And remember, the Son of Man, I always thought the Son of Man, well, Jesus is referring to, that he is a man, right? The Son of Man, that makes sense. But actually in Scripture, it's not that case. That when you look at Daniel and Ezekiel, when the Son of Man is referenced, it's a reference to God. And it's kind of, you scratch your head, but that's just the way it is. So here, Jesus mentions himself as the Son of Man 3 times. And each time he's saying, I am God, and I'm going to come when I least expect it. And then you notice on the days of Noah, when the water swept away, there was only one family left standing, and that was Noah and his family. So when we see one man taken or another woman taken, the one left is the one that's righteous in the eyes of God. And then with Psalm 22, you will notice how he will create these judgment seats for his people. And then we see that, even though that psalm was probably written 1,000 years before Jesus, we see that playing out in Revelation, in the book of Revelations, where these 24 elders are taking their seats at judgment seats. And so remember what these 24 represent. They represent the 12 sons of Israel. Jacob changed his name to Israel. The 12 sons of Israel. And then we got the 12 apostles there. That's why Jesus chose 12, to recognize that these men, these apostles, are a continuation of the 12 tribes of Israel there. Okay, then we get to Isaiah. Now, I mentioned it several times, Isaiah is one of my favorite prophets, probably the favorite prophet. I have a little dog named after Isaiah, so that ought to be a clue right there. Now, what is it I admire the most about Isaiah? He was born in 745 years before Jesus, and then lived in that very tumultuous time. Of course, you may be saying, well, when with the Israelite tribes is there not a tumultuous time? But here was one of those times, right? And it was basically a time when the Assyrians, so at the time, the 10 tribes in the north had their own kingdom, and the 2 tribes in the south had their kingdom called Judah. And the Assyrians either were in the process of taking down the kingdom of Israel, or they already did it by the time Isaiah writes these words in the 2nd chapter here. Now, remember, there were 66 chapters in Isaiah, of which we can see that the first 39 are definitely written by this guy in the 8th century BC named Isaiah. However, from chapters 40 to 66, the references are such in a way that they refer to the Assyrians and everything else, and they're in exile and everything else, and it's like, well, wait a minute now, this was not the original Isaiah. This was written by his disciples. So this guy Isaiah was such an incredible dude that he was influencing people writing in his name 150 and even 250 years after Isaiah died. Now, these 66 chapters of Isaiah are very important in the Hebrew tradition. Aside from the Psalms, the 150 Psalms, these 66 chapters of Isaiah is what used the most of all the books in the Old Testament in Hebrew worship. And then when we carried out in Christian worship, besides the Psalms, the 150 Psalms, these 66 chapters of Isaiah is what's used. It's a book that's used the most in the Christian liturgy. And throughout this season of Advent, you're going to see Isaiah depicted. Okay, now, the other reason why I like Isaiah, and he's just an influential dude, he was humble. We don't really know a lot about Isaiah, other than he was born in the south, he lived in Jerusalem. He had 2 sons, and we know his daddy was named Amos. That's it. Here's this guy that is so influential, and all we know is those 3 things. The other thing I like about Isaiah is he is real. He doesn't mince with words. He tells it like it is. And he doesn't hide anything. He's pointing the finger at himself and at the people and saying, you guys are messing up. And he tells it like it is. He's very real. And yet, despite the fact that he's very real, he's also got this naive optimism that's in him. Almost like, I label it childlike optimism. And you just saw it in this morning's reading here. Let me tell you this story here. So here's Isaiah, who understands that there's this country out there called the Assyrians, and they're fierce and they're violent. They're fierce and they're violent. And he knows about them. He knows the destruction of what they have done. And yet, here's Isaiah saying, by the way, there's going to be a situation where they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. And one nation shall not raise a sword against another, nor shall they train for war again. This is this childlike optimism that Isaiah brings to the world. He's very real, and yet he still continues to be optimistic. One of my favorite chapters in all of Scripture comes from Isaiah 11. And you guys are probably familiar with this passage where he says a little baby child is going to play at the den of an adder, a cobra's den, and not be harmed. Well, that's pretty naive optimism there, right? Or that a kid goat is going to lie with a lion, and they're going to eat hay. And there's not going to be any violence. This is the optimism of Isaiah. And dare I say, this should be our optimism also. Is our world violent and cruel and mean to each other, just like Isaiah, day of Isaiah? Heck yes. As a matter of fact, the 20th century is the most violent century of all the previous 19 put together. More people died by violence in the 20th century than any other century before the first 19 put together. So we people know what violence is all about. We know what persecution is all about. We know when we see people being mean to each other all the time, especially in politics. But yet at the same time, we're called to be optimistic and hopeful. And like Isaiah and like the people of Isaiah of his time and Jesus of his time, we too experience pain and struggles in our marriages and in our family life. And yet, like Isaiah, some way, some shape, or how, we need to be optimistic and hopeful about our situation, the situation of our families, and the situation of our world. But we know that there's only one true source of optimism, and that is Jesus Christ and his kingdom. And there's where we have hope, just like Isaiah, even though it's naive optimism and childlike optimism. We still have hope, and Jesus gives us every reason to be hopeful. In the midst of our struggles, in the midst of our violent world, we have every reason in the world to be hopeful. So in the meantime, this is the season of Advent, for crying out loud. We need to be patient, we need to wait, and we need to wait in prayer. Prayer will bring us hope. Prayer will lead us authentically to Jesus Christ.